This is HBR News number 507. Oliver Anthony finds out Diddy and Weinstein updates, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you're not consumed by it. I am your host, Brian, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Hannah and Dr. Ranmercam.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hello, everybody.
I understand that it's really hot in London or in the UK right now, which...
I apologize if you can hear my fan. I keep trying to turn it off while turning my microphone on at the same time. It's like it's like musical chairs. It's like trying to spin plates, but I think I can do it.
Yeah. No, well, we can't hear it right now, but that might be because it's not on. But yeah, I understand if you have to use it, so don't sweat it. So... Anyway, welcome to the show. We have a great show lined up for you guys this week. Lots going on. I had to narrow it down. Sorry, not going to be talking about Israel and Iran today. I know that people have opinions on that. Feel free to share it, but I think that things in that part of the world, as well as Ukraine and Russia, change so quickly, and there's so much going around that it's best to just wait until the dust settles and then talk about whatever happens, whatever has happened from there, anything really significant. But
and we're not going to be talking about the investigation into the grooming gangs in Britain either.
Yeah,
because fuck the Jews and fuck the Muslims. I mean, we don't really give a shit. Fuck it.
Yeah,
let's talk about what's going on with our cultures. How about
yeah, the ones that have a chance. So anyway, on this week's HBR News Shows, we're going to be looking at the latest updates in the Sean Diddy Combs case and Harvey Weinstein's case, respectively. And there was an assassination of a couple of government officials, which has sparked a lot of controversy and debate and finger pointing. And we just want to see what we can do to clear the air on that and all the narrative surrounding that, as well as some recent things that happened with Oliver Anthony, which, if you haven't heard, it should be fairly interesting. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. I found this on Ms. Magazine. It's from a few months ago, but I never saw it. It was sort of like a year in review thing. And I don't go to Ms. Magazine very often, but yes, it still exists. And yes, it's still a tremendous force in the world of feminism. So much so that apparently Ms. Magazine has the ability to judge other feminisms to find out which feminisms are feminism meaning right. And so they have a roundup of the best and worst quotes of 2024 by Livia Follett, a collection of this year's most inspiring and infuriating things said by and about women. You'll notice in the title, it doesn't say anything about feminists. It just says women.
Gotta realize this magazine is the magazine that Gloria Steinem started. It literally is a psyop, and it is the most solid bit of evidence that at least the second wave of feminism and everything that came after it is a psyop. Probably the first wave was as well, because we went back and traced, and it's actually been establishment from the beginning, from the roots. So you could call it a psyop, although obviously when feminism started, there was no such thing as the CIA. But
yeah.
And just one more thing about modern women, shall we call them, white women in the countries in which they exist.
White women in distress.
White women. And one more thing about the grooming gangs in Britain. British people have noticed that the only people still defending the Pakistani grooming gangs are middle-aged white women, and people are sort of up in arms, going, "Why is this happening? Why would these white European women be the only ones left defending the Pakistani grooming gangs?" And I'm like, it's so more obvious than you think it is. It's because modern women are like modern governments. They're not interested in defending women or helping women or defending or helping minorities. They're only interested in controlling their property And by their property, I mean the men of their own nation, namely, in this case, white men. So in this case, white women are only interested in punishing white men because it's the only thing in their political vocabulary. No matter how much non-white men and white women are sort of having disputes of some kind, the only solution they can think of is punishing white men. So yeah, I hope that explains as many of the hot topics going on this week as it can. We've been under the thumb of modern governments and modern feminism, whose only solution to anything is punishing white men.
The same
Yep.
is true of other women too. Like black women use black feminism to control black men, and we've talked about like when one culture conquers another culture, the women of the culture, as their men are just being killed off, they join the conquering culture. What ends up happening then is they use the gynocentric female victim narrative to control the new culture, and in particular the men of the new culture, because they're the ones that are going to be doing the heavy lifting, and it happens every time. So the men who are in Europe right now, who are not native to Europe, who are watching the white women of Europe use you to control the white men of Europe, just wait, because they'll be coming for you next.
All right. Well, if you want to join us to partake in us reading through this article from Ms. Magazine, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to watch all of the additional content, like all of our patron shows and lots of other exclusives. And there's also lots of other things going on in the Discord. So please consider joining the Discord by becoming a member, feedthebadger.com/subscribe. Or if you just want to check it out for free, you can check out the free version of it by going to badgernation.online. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that our content has been finally permanently removed from the mainstream internet, then please, well, first of all, you should be following us on our alternative platforms. We are streaming to Rumble. It's HB Radio on Rumble, so just look it up there. And we are also on Kick now, which is also Honey Badger Radio on Kick. So with all that all out of the way, let us now get into today's stories. All right. So, in the latest developments in Harvey Weinstein's New York sex crimes retrial, Judge Curtis Farber declared a mistrial on June 12th, 2025 for a third-degree rape charge involving actress Jessica Mann. This followed Jessica Mann. She was in some B movies, so I don't really know. Not a stellar career. I looked her up. Don't recognize her from anything. This followed a partial verdict on June 11th, where the jury convicted Weinstein of a first-degree criminal sexual act against Miriam Haley for an assault in 2006, but acquitted him of a similar charge involving Kaja Sokola from that same year. The mistrial stemmed from the jury foreperson's refusal to continue deliberating, citing threats and bullying from another juror, including a comment about meeting him outside. Tensions in the jury room had escalated over days, with the foreperson reporting feeling unsafe, leading Farber to end deliberations on the remaining charge. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg announced plans to retry Weinstein on the rape charge, with the status hearing set for July 2nd, 2025. Weinstein, who has denied all charges, remains incarcerated due to his New York conviction and a separate 16-year sentence from a 2022 California rape conviction, which he is currently appealing. The retrial followed the overturning of his 2020 New York conviction by the state's Court of Appeals on April 2024, which found the original trial prejudiced due to improper testimony. Jessica Mann, who testified about the 2013 rape, expressed determination to testify again, stating, quote, "I will never give up on myself and making sure my voice and my truth is heard," end quote. The case continues to be a significant touchstone for the #MeToo movement, with prosecutors emphasizing accountability despite the jury's deadlock on Mann's charge. Weinstein's defense, led by Arthur Aidala, argues that the conviction may be challenged due to alleged juror misconduct. Was also claimed, again, I'm just pointing out that the reason why these cases are starting to fall apart is because of the nature of consent, which is that consent was supposedly given, and that is essentially all they have to go off of, is to try to convince the jury and the judge that despite the fact that consent was given, there were other factors at play that may have made it difficult or impossible for the women to consent. So anyway, that's
Well,
it. I leave you the floor for which you guys can share your opinions.
what that basically means is they're taking a woman's consent and saying, well, after the fact, I withdraw this, it was invalid. And they're using things like, oh, there was a difference in power, or there was she wanted something really badly and only he controlled her access to it, basically, as the argument that her consent was invalid. But you have to remember that this was not the only way she could have gotten what she wanted. And it sounds like she rode the casting couch, and actually all she got was this lousy B movie part, which sounds really, really bad. And so she's probably this is probably a little bit of sour grapes, in all reality, and that's why she's trying so hard to make this happen. But when it comes down to it, if you look at what the basis for this story is, the jury may be a hung jury or something because the one guy won't go back because he's afraid of another juror's behavior. That indicates that somebody in the jury room is basing their decision-making process on emotion and not logic. Because if you're going through a set of facts and you're trying to make a decision as to what is indicated by the set of facts, what do these facts, if taken together, actually mean about the situation, and how should we describe the situation? Should we call him guilty or should we call him not guilty? Like that's the question jurors go in to deliberate, right? There shouldn't be any emotion involved in making that decision. There shouldn't be. It shouldn't get heated. And if you've ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men, you can sort of see how people's underlying beliefs and prejudices, biases will influence their positions they take when they're making these kind of decisions, and how the individuals who don't have any questions because they have biases will get angry, and they'll get angry at the individuals who do have questions because they don't have biases. And this is something that happens in every type of argument. If you're making a decision in the workplace, what are we going to do about situation X? Where you're making a decision in your family, what are we going to do about this budget problem? It becomes an emotional argument when the facts are not the only thing on your mind. We really want to spend this money on this thing, but if we do, we won't be able to afford to spend it on something else that is important. And your emotion of really wanting, being emotionally attached to the expenditure you want gets in the way of making an unemotional decision about how you should spend the money. That couples divorce over this shit, right? So jurors, when you have somebody who is married to the idea that if she says she was raped, she must have been raped, or there's a political outcome that you think should be happening because of this case, or you have a particular affiliation with, the business or the individual, you have a personal investment in a particular outcome, and the facts point in a different direction, you're likely to get emotional and start bullying and badgering. And you won't argue based on logic and reason. Well, this evidence indicates XYZ. And I don't see where your questions are coming from, or this evidence answers your question. And if somebody comes up with a question that you can't answer from the perspective of the decision that you've already made, then it becomes a moment of curiosity. Well, what has he brought up? Let's take a look at this. Maybe the outcome is different than I thought. But if you're married to a particular outcome for whatever reason, then you're offended by that, and then you start behaving badly. And that's probably what's going on here. You probably have either a juror who is looking at evidence and saying, that this evidence isn't sufficient to prove guilt. Is there something that we're missing? And another juror saying, obviously he's guilty. He was found guilty once. We should find him guilty again. And who maybe has, a feminist outlook or something along those lines that's getting mad and threatening him. Or it's the other way around. And you have somebody who is questioning that the lack of evidence, say somebody saying, hey, he looks, from everything that's in front of me, he looks guilty, and somebody going, no, I'm not voting guilty. This was overturned once, we should overturn it again. And we don't know. All we know is that somebody in the room is acting out of emotion instead of logic, and the result is probably going to be, this is going to have to be started all over again, or it's going to be dropped.
Yep, I suspect it's going to get thrown out, and I think that's the reason why the media is essentially like not talking about it right now. Like when the allegations came out, it was everywhere, and then it quickly spread from a situation or a condition of Hollywood or cultural problem with Hollywood to becoming a problem everywhere else. And it was like, oh no, it's not just the casting couch, it's the boardroom, it's the, it's the manager's office, it's your professors, it's your teachers, it's the game development studio, it's the animation department, whatever. And
you started hearing regular women sounding like that rad femme from the women's room. All men are rapists, and that's all that they are. Like the most famous quote from that book. And it's been everywhere. It's gone everywhere, and it's cost people their jobs.
Yeah.
And it's cost some people their lives. There have been people that have committed suicide as a result of false allegations that were bolstered by the movement started by Harvey Weinstein's accusers.
Remember, they used it as a political tool. They tried to use it to ensure that Trump didn't get elected twice. Like in both, well, all three times he ran, they tried to use it against Justice Kavanaugh. They tried to use it. I mean, they use it to get jobs. Like, why does like our film and gaming industry suck so much? Well, because a bunch of talented people got Me Too'd and lost their jobs. And
y'all remember Alyssa Milano sitting at the Kavanaugh hearings?
Yes,
and looking like she was going to.
Wasn't she dressed up like the Handmaid's Tale too? Like,
no, I don't think she was dressed up like the Handmaid's Tale. The weird thing was the way she was looking around, and we watched her at some point, and it seriously looked like she was waiting for a cue or a sign for something to happen. Like she was had something off about her at that, and fortunately, whatever it was didn't go down. But I will never forget that, because I'm like, does she think that she's on the set of Charmed instead of in real life?
Yeah, right. She never grew up. But the last thing I'll say about it is that it looks like all of his cases falling apart. The case against him is falling apart. The case against Andrew Tate fell apart. The case against Trump, there was some new developments with E. Jean Carroll that I thought about bringing on here, but apparently like that's still going on. It's still looming. And I think that the media is going to either never speak of this again because it won't go well for them, or they're going to try to figure out a way to spin it so that, it might be both of these things, so that Harvey Weinstein beating this case in the same way that Bill Cosby might beat his case, because I think it's still going to appeal, and many others, is only proof of how powerful the patriarchy is and how men can just do things and get away with it because they have drilled it into the minds of normies so much that this is real and true and this guy's a monster, that no matter what the outcome is, it's only gonna, people are gonna validate what they already believe to be true.
Yeah.
So,
and they're gonna feminists are going to, because they do this already. They're going to generalize it to all men everywhere all the time. And
yeah,
you
absolutely.
look at
That's the point of it.
right. You look at the way they talk about violent crime. Right, less than 4% of the population are perpetrators of violent crime. All of the violent crime, including domestic violence, is perpetrated by a tiny percentage of the population, and they eliminate the women from that percentage when they're talking about it. And then they also generalize it to all men and boys everywhere all the time. And when you talk about the fact that, most men, over 96% are nonviolent, they say, well, but 99% of this or that crime is perpetrated by men, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't matter. Even if it is true, if it is less than 4% of the entire population, and some of those are women, so we're talking about less than 90 or over 96% of men being nonviolent. It doesn't matter what percentage of the violent portion of the population is male. It still doesn't translate into all men everywhere all the time, does it?
No, no, of course not. Mike, did you want to say anything about this, or should we want to save it for Diddy, because they're like kind of similar stories?
Yeah, no, it's the stories are connected. I did watch 12 Angry Men only because it's the 5th highest rated movie on IMDb, so I had to go, well, what's all this about? And it was all about one of the 12 Angry Men sort of going, well, maybe this minority man isn't guilty.
Yeah.
I can't remember what minority man it was. I think it was an African American of some sort.
Yes, and he was accused of a knife crime.
Yes, and some guy threw the same knife on the table, and was all very dramatic.
Yeah,
and the modern day equivalent is hard to pin down, even with a knife to a table. I guess the modern equivalent is a man. Like, just because a man is accused doesn't mean he's necessarily guilty. And it takes one of the 12 angry birthing persons to really expose any doubt as to whether a man is guilty. But yeah, we'll get to it in the second story. I have a lot to say about the second story. We'll do it then.
Yeah.
Just say, I'm going to assign homework, though. If you're listening to this or watching this and you have not seen, go back to the original black and white version of 12 Angry Men. Watch that movie. It's going to seem dry in comparison to modern movies, but if you really pay attention to what's going on in that movie, it is an emotional roller coaster, and it is a great history lesson. And you really should. It's also a great lesson on the way the legal system works versus how it should work. And you really, really should watch that movie, especially if you are living in the United States and you're old enough or close to old enough to get called for jury duty, because it's something you should have in mind if you ever do get called.
Okay. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. We're going to move on to the next one, which is related. It's quite similar. So let's get into the next story. So we're going to be talking about the latest news or updates with the P. Diddy trial, which is also kind of shocking. So the Sean Diddy Combs trial, ongoing as of June 17th, 2025, has seen significant developments in the 6th week. Combs faces charges.
Why don't we pronounce it Coombs?
It
would make so much sense if we pronounced it Coombs.
Yeah, I guess it would.
Anyway.
No, it's okay. Combs faces charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, to which he has pleaded not guilty. The trial centers on allegations that Combs ran a criminal enterprise involving coercion, abuse, and drug-fueled sexual events called freak-offs. Key testimony has come from his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, not related to Jesse Ventura, I assume, who detailed physical abuse and coercion into sexual performances, and another accuser named Jane, which I assume just means Jane Doe because they don't want to be identified, who described similar experiences from 2021 to 2024, including a violent 2024 altercation where Combs allegedly choked her. On June 17th, financial documents were presented linking Combs' Bad Boy Entertainment to alleged freak-off payments, and text messages showed Combs' persistent attempts to contact Ventura after a 2016 incident, including a message referencing her black eye and fat lip. A juror was dismissed for inconsistent residency claims, raising concerns about jury diversity, and Judge Arun Subramanian, wow, I pronounced that, threatened sanctions over a potential evidence leak. The defense has challenged witness credibility, particularly targeting Ventura and Jane's motives, suggesting their participation in sexual encounters was consensual. Combs' attorney, Tenny Geragos, has framed the case as involving, quote, love, jealousy, infidelity, and money, end quote, admitting Combs' violence but disputing criminal intent. Notable moments include Kanye West's brief appearance on June 13th to support Combs. Wow, and a courtroom incident where Combs was nearly removed for interacting with jurors. The prosecution has called over 30 witnesses, including former assistants and a hotel security guard, with some testifying under immunity. The defense estimates its case may last 2 to 5 days, with jury deliberations potentially starting next week. The trial has drawn significant attention, amplified by online content creators, some of whom have faced criticism for leaking witness identities.
A few weeks ago, I can't remember what show it was, but I raised the controversial hypothetical that I might become skeptical with regard to Diddy being thrown under the bus. Only because when Hollywood and the music industry and the degenerate communist factory that controls them, whenever they throw someone under the bus, that doesn't necessarily mean that person is guilty of anything. In all likelihood, it's that this is their latest scapegoat. The degenerate communist entertainment factory is a deeply dark place that takes children from the earliest possible age and warps them into highly disturbed adults. It's very much a cult that requires a human sacrifice every now and again. It's what happened to Michael Jackson. He was put through the ringers of this machine from the age of 11 right up until his death at 50-ish, I think it was. He was denied a normal childhood. So he became a stunted adult who couldn't really relate to anyone except children. That made him the ideal sacrificial lamb for the factory. You hang around with children? Well, shit, Jacko, you do what you gotta do, but don't you dare ever criticize the Jews. Oh shit, you criticize the Jews. Nonce. Everyone call Wacko Jacko a nonce. We'll promise you millions of dollars if you call him a nonce. Step right up. It's going to be a delicious bloodbath of undeveloped entrails. And there's no shortage in fact, there's an overflowing wealth of adults who have been broken ever since childhood, whom we will strap to the altar and plunge a diamond dagger through their hearts the moment they criticize the wrong people. Now, I'm not interested in defending Diddy. I think in all probability he is guilty of just about everything of which he's accused. All I'm thinking of is he's not the only one. I get the distinct feeling that what he's described as doing is the kind of thing that happens at Hollywood parties as a matter of course. like, I've been to university. I went to student parties. I'm not saying they involved the kind of drug-fueled sexuality, debauchery described in the Diddy case. In fact, I didn't get involved in the sexual debauchery whatsoever. I was far too busy with the drugs and the rock and roll. But it can hardly be denied there is a time and a place for everything, and it's called college. Well, the Hollywood degeneracy factory is that times 1,000. It's people who indulge in a decadent, rebellious lifestyle because they can afford it, but times 1,000. It's people holding on to that totemic juvenility for as long as they can because it's their job to harness the juvenile spirit of rebellion for the sake of the billions of dollars that comes with pertaining to it. I guess what I'm saying is, if you think Diddy is the only celebrity who's guilty of this shit, I have a bridge to sell you. Again, I think he probably is guilty of what he's accused, but I think he's only being charged with it because he was the worst offender. There are no doubt countless celebrities who have been almost as evil, but they all agreed to target Diddy and throw him under the bus so they could pat themselves on the back and go, well, at least I'm not as bad as Diddy. Well, maybe not. But the fact that you're getting away with it arguably makes you even worse. In the same way, Tupac was murdered and Biggie Smalls was murdered, but his close comrade Diddy was not murdered. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean Diddy is implicated in anything, but it does mean he might deserve the survivor's guilt to which he might be subjected. And that goes for the rest of you who have been raping and beating innocent nobodies for the last 30 or 40 years and getting away with it. Do you feel bad? Do you feel mad? Maybe you should. And maybe you should fuck off and enjoy your millions in the acute duper's delight of knowing you got away with it. Ideally, you should get the electric chair or something to that effect. Be thankful that you never will, whoever you are. And I won't even name the names who are guilty, because it would probably be quicker to name the names who are not. It's stay away from the Hollywood communist factory, folks. It's not worth it. That's all I'm saying.
I want to point out some things that have been bothering me for quite a while about all of these allegation frenzies, feeding frenzies. The Cosby frenzy, the Weinstein frenzy, the political allegation frenzies, the Diddy frenzy, everything that's happened, right? When #MeToo started, there was a documentary that came out, and there were some groups that came out talking about it, called An Open Secret, about the sexual abuse specifically of little boys in Hollywood, but little girls too. This happens to children of both sexes, and it has been going on for a very long time. Like, it's generational. It's not even something that just happened to actors when Gen X were kids. This was something that happened. It goes back to the early days of Hollywood, like when Shirley Temple was famous. And children working in Hollywood have been overworked, taken advantage of, tossed aside when they got a little older, ruined pretty much for any other type of work, bankrupted, and then thrown aside. They've been sexually abused. They've been physically beaten and abused. and they've been denied any type of an education for the longest time. Laws had to be passed to ensure that these children actually received a basic education, and their mothers signed on for this fame. And like, stage moms are notorious for pushing their child's fame over everything else and not caring how what is being done to their child ultimately affects the child's welfare. And there were allegations against some handlers, basically, that parents pretty much signed custody over to, and their children lived with these handlers and were taken to parties and abused. They were abused in the workplace. They were just completely and utterly abandoned in terms of any adult that would protect them to the predators in Hollywood. And there have been, if you look at the information that has come out about what has happened to children, various children in Hollywood over the generations, there have been suicides, there have been slow suicides where the individual...
Because I think the vertical did not
Yeah, the
go
vertical never
offline
went
for
down.
whatever reason. It's a strange beast. So let me
Yeah.
just make sure. Okay, so we're gonna have a new stream on the horizontal, and I don't know about Rumble. That might just be a lost cause too.
Yeah,
But Rumble
well, it
can
looks like
pick
they're
up.
still
It can
chatting in
pick it up.
Rumble.
It could pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
What's
kinda
the
hate
one
this,
that's
so-
represented by a K? Is that...
That's Kick. It's like a new thing that
Okay.
we do now.
That didn't go down.
That didn't go down either. Yeah, Kick and is
Yeah.
like Twitch. It's like a Twitch
Nice.
competitor. So, it doesn't go down. So, all right. Sorry guys. I think I'm live now on this one. Sorry about that. It's completely out of my control. Basically, there's a storm, and when there's a storm, anything can happen. And because I rely on things like electricity to do my job, if something happens to it, I'm just screwed. So I am
Yep.
sorry for that. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. I wish it don't be what it do, but it is. But it do. As
Yep.
the Black Science Man says. So
the attack of the crazy weather. Like, what would feminists call that? Because of course it interrupted me, right?
yeah,
It can't be man-interrupting because the weather is Mother Earth.
storm-interrupting.
I was storm-interrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
All right, so
Britain. This shit never happens in Britain because we
Yeah,
have
sure.
a king.
Uh-huh.
Damn it.
all right,
Yeah, that's totally it. The king controls.
make sure the chat is working okay, and then Hannah, you can go ahead and give your testimony where we left off before the Jews interrupted you with their weather machine. Just kidding.
I've watched
Kinda.
full videos of people talking about the belief in that and everything, but I just to ward off any of that, this weather has been predicted for more than a day. They've been saying for more than a day that this was coming. So it couldn't have been something that was spontaneous right in the middle of me talking about the Hollywood child molestation machine and the feminist reaction to that Hollywood child molestation machine being discussed during the outbreak of #MeToo, because it would be impossible for them to anticipate 2 days ago that I was going to say any of that, and to know to set up the weather to earth erupt or whatever, and stop this evil anti-Hollywood monologue. But what I was talking about, what I was going to say here is that as important as it is to deal with predators at every level and whatever, it is obviously horrible when somebody's life gets disrupted so badly by a violent sexual assault, regardless of how old they are. and what the consequences of that assault are to them. The fact that when I talked about this, and when other people talked about this during the hashtag Me Too movement, when we talked about an open secret and whether or not, like, is this legit? Is this what's going on with this documentary? Are these accusers up front? What's the evidence, and so on? We got lambasted. We got attacked by feminists in the hashtag for stealing women's moment of truth, right? Stealing women's moment of vengeance and stealing women's moment of having their say, getting justice by naming their perpetrators in public and not giving them any opportunity at due process. So the phenomenon was not important enough to trump that. Literally, they threw children under the bus because women. That was their whole take. They did not care, and in fact, they were angry that we were talking about that instead of talking about them. I don't think you can get more narcissistic than that. Honestly, to get angry that people care more about what happens to children than people care about the Hollywood casting couch and how adults have created and handled that situation.
Yes. And I wanted to add, this is the thing I was going to bring up before my everything imploded on my internet and electricity. First of all, Meredith G gives us $5 and says HBR News number 507, Honey for the Badgers. Thank you, Meredith. And but what I was going to say is what P. Diddy is accused of and what the evidence is are different things. And that's important because there seems to be an attempt to lay out let's say, make a case for more crimes than we have evidence for that we can see. So, there was that video that was going around of P. Diddy, like, dragging a woman off by her hair, and maybe there was some more violent action. And that looks bad, and that's a crime. It's called assault, and maybe even like, maybe even a more severe form of assault a case could be made for that. But what he's being accused of, or what he faces charges of, is different: racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Those are the charges that he's pleading not guilty of. And that video clip is what is being used to support the case for much more serious crimes, or at least what I assume are much more serious crimes. And so, like, I think the idea would be for us to keep a cool head about this, because what they're doing, I think, is, and again, he could be guilty of everything, but if he is, then let's see the evidence and let's see the case as it is, dispassionately, not have a cow about it, and just look at it objectively, okay? I should probably put myself on camera for this. And what it seems to be happening here is they found a clip of him, essentially like dragging a woman by the hair. I think it was in a hotel room or something, and he's got a towel around his neck. We don't know the full context of it, but it doesn't look good for him, and I think that what he's doing is wrong, and there's a crime. It's called assault. It could be something more than that, but I mean, no more serious than if it was two men engaging in the same thing. But because I think that the way that it could be used is to say, well, look, he is doing this to a woman, and that has an emotional effect on people where they're like, oh my God, this guy must be a monster. And so when they say, well, he's also he's also being charged with these other things, people are more likely to be like, oh yeah, well, he must, I mean, if he was willing to hit a woman, then he's capable of anything. And then they just kind of go along with it. And so the jury could be biased in this way. But I mean, more than that, like, no matter what we do on this little show with all of its technical problems and everything, it will not change the public perception of Diddy himself. It's not going to affect what people think about him. So that is almost like it's almost like the same thing as the Derek Chauvin case, okay? Derek Chauvin was not accused of murdering George Floyd, Derek Chauvin was accused of racism, and the court of public opinion resoundingly found him guilty of that. So everything that follows from that is basically permissible because he is guilty of the worst possible crime, which is bigotry. And in the same sense, this could be the same kind of weaponization of people's emotions on Diddy by saying he was willing to harm a woman, therefore he could do anything. There's like nothing off the table. And all of a sudden, people will be willing to buy into that. So again, I don't know that, like, according to the details of the case, it looks like there's a lot of shit that's being thrown at him that there's not a strong case for. And what the media and the people, the influencers and all of that around this want you to do is see this a certain way in a certain emotional framework, which will essentially cause you to, like lose your sense of reason and basically go with the narrative because, in particular, there are female victims involved. And this is the same thing as the Harvey Weinstein thing. When you understand that women are human and they're capable of evil and lies and manipulation and exploitation, and they're guilty of all the same human failings and foibles that men are, then the Harvey Weinstein case cannot hold water because you're like, well, it's a casting couch. Anybody, like, this is what people do. Unfortunately, it's the reality, but when they frame it in such a way that there is a man and men are, they have a completely different physical and psychological profile than women, and so they're uniquely capable of evil things, and women are not, and women are uniquely victimized by those things, then it has an emotional effect. And you see it all the time. I mean, you see it all the time. Like every case that we've looked at, that we've had to go to bat for people we didn't really like personally. Like, I'm not a fan of Harvey Weinstein, but I hate that I even have to say that. Like some kind of preamble, guys, I don't like the guy, but like I hate that. Like I'm just looking at it objectively as what we see the case for what it is. So I think that it is an emotional manipulation, and we should be very cautious of our own biases. We're going to see what we want to see if we allow this to affect us. So I'll be waiting to see what comes out of it, but I just want to bear in mind what Diddy is guilty of that we can see, and what he is being accused of are very different things. So
I'm thinking of the guys over both of his shoulders, just doing that meme of like, yes, dear. You
mean in the courtroom art?
The guys with the drawings, faces going, oh yes.
Yeah.
I have to correct something I said earlier. This was pointed out to me that I'm probably conflating To Kill a Mockingbird with 12 Angry Men in my head. The defendant in the original 12 Angry Men was actually Puerto Rican.
Wow, finally some representation. Thank you, Hollywood.
That's an old movie.
It's about time. I know. That's funny. All right. Well, anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one. Unfortunately, this whole thing with my electricity going down put us a little bit behind the gun or under the gun. So we're going to move on to the next story and try to keep it brief. But everybody's talking about it, so let's take a look at it. All right. So, on June 14, 2025, Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman, 55, and her husband, Mark Hortman, 58, were fatally shot at their home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, in what Governor Tim Walz described as a politically motivated assassination. The suspect, Vance Luther Bolter, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's pronounced Bolter. It's Oelter. 57, allegedly posed as a police officer using a vehicle with emergency lights and wearing a tactical vest. Bolter was arrested on June 15, 2025 after a 2-day manhunt and faces 6 federal charges, including murder, as well as state charges. In a related attack, State Senator John Hoffman, 60, and his wife, Yvette, were shot in their home in Champlin, approximately 9 miles away around 2 a.m. on June 14th. Both survived and are recovering after surgery, with Yvette reportedly shielding their daughter during the attack. Authorities found a hit list in Bolter's vehicle containing over 50 names, including Minnesota lawmakers, abortion rights advocates, and Democratic officials like U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. Bolter, who served on the state's workforce development board with Hoffman, had conducted surveillance on his targets. The Hennepin County medical examiner confirmed the Hortmans died of multiple gunshot wounds, with Melissa pronounced dead at the scene and Mark at North Memorial Health in Robbinsdale. And around this, there's been a lot of, like, people were, the rumor mill was swirling like crazy, right? And I was not able to, like, easily determine the facts from fiction. And I think this is like the reason why I picked the story was primarily because whenever something tragic happens, everyone scrambles to figure out who to blame. And in particular, the hardcore, like, leftists and rightists are like, oh, it's those guys that did it, right? And they're looking for any evidence they can find that points to that. But this is not like this is like a very strange situation. I think it behooves us, again, like I said with the Diddy and the Weinstein thing, that we remain cool-headed and wait to see what we learn as things develop, and not try to use all of this stuff to, like, leverage, you know, our positions and, like, score political points or whatever. I usually get, like, upset when I feel like people are hiding things from me, like the trans mass shooter. You know, their manifestos were like, I think that to some degree they're still being kept from us, and that is, you know, terrible, because we're forced, we can't do anything but speculate. And I think that it's better if we have all the information. But anyway, so some misinformation has circulated, particularly on social media platforms like X. One post falsely claims that the shootings were, quote, state-sanctioned assassinations linked to Trump police and ICE, which lacks evidence completely and contradicts official reports identifying Bolter as the sole suspect acting as an individual, at least as far as we know. Another point of confusion involves the motive, which remains under investigation. That's us today. Like, I think that there might be some breaking stuff I'll check on while we guys are talking about this, but as of right now, he was acting alone. While the attacks were labeled politically motivated due to the targeting of Democratic lawmakers and the hit list, no definitive ideological motive has yet been confirmed, and speculation about broader conspiracies is unsubstantiated. Additionally, some reports initially misnamed Senator John Hoffman as John Huffman, which has been corrected in subsequent coverage, because that's a different person, I guess. The claim that Bolter's wife was detained under a passport and weapon were found in her car has not been independently verified by multiple sources, so it should be treated with caution. So, anyway, so this is an ongoing story. I did try to do some last-minute digging on this. There were some people that claimed that he was a militant anti-abortion extremist with a Christian nationalist manifesto. This has no corroboration with any official sources, so it should be treated as inconclusive. While his hit list included abortion rights advocates, no confirmed manifesto tied to Christian nationalism has been reported by authorities. Not that Christian nationalists have a pattern of assassinating political targets, but I digress. Another false claim suggested his wife was detained with a passport, like I mentioned, or weapon. So, yeah, I mean, like, there's just not much that we know, but I wanted to, like, mention it. This is I think this guy is a particular brand of crazy. That's what I think, anyway, or at least radical, you know. So, I don't know. Let you guys say what you want to say about it.
I think I've talked about this particular brand of crazy before in response to, the baseball shooting was one. The Senate, I think it's Senate, it might be House baseball game shooting, but there's a particular brand of crazy, like Brian says, that when rhetoric gets the rhetoric itself isn't violent, but it implies value to violence that is individually targeted or outside of the normal ways that violence is used to handle something. So outside of arrest, outside of declarations of war, where an individual just goes off and goes off the deep end like this. That particular brand of crazy sees validity in that and sees his own personal issues in that and his own personal tendencies in that. And it can be, a female can do the same thing, but it's usually when somebody's going to act on it, when somebody's going to actually take action. It's usually a man, and there's usually signs and symptoms that people have missed prior to that. When somebody goes off like that, even when it's a small thing, I had an experience with an assailant in 2019 that had the same kind of, there were several signs that everybody missed that this person was going to go off. And now after the fact, we are all like, oh, well, that, we should have noticed when she did this and she did that. But when it's a guy, the violence is more efficient and unfortunately more effective. And that's what we see in this instance. And unfortunately, people are going to ignore all of the contributing factors. For instance, in the pro-life movement, we all have an awareness that there is a fringe edge of the anti-abortion movement within the pro-life movement that is violent. There have been attacks on abortion providers. There had been clinic bombings and everything. And as a result, those of us in the mainstream of the anti-abortion movement do our best to keep our rhetoric clear of any implied advocacy or approval of violence as a solution to this issue. But unfortunately, when it comes to politics, people have not done that. And when it comes to politics of such a contingent nature as we currently have, it's become like this kind of thing was predicted. It's become so bad that the people who will go off the deep end, and I think we've been warning about this too, that the people who go off the deep end are getting the fuel they need to put them off the deep end. And this is the result. And we've seen it on both sides of the left-right political spectrum. We've seen it for years. We've seen it from people who have single-issue obsession, which is one of the things that happens with abortion clinic bombings. It's also the same thing that happens with people who let animals out of labs that are testing scary germs, or who attack ordinary people in ordinary places with a crazy environmentalist message that doesn't necessarily relate to the rest of environmentalism. When you turn your rhetoric toward the other side is evil and the other side deserves to die or deserves to suffer, rather than the other side is very wrong about this issue, and if they're not listening, then we have to take control of the legislative process and override them. You get crazy people that shoot other people or go off in a variety of other ways. You get bombings, you get horrible stuff like this. And it's just important for people to remember that if you're in a group of people, or if you happen to know somebody who is, it looks like they're in that situation, it's better to talk to them before it gets to that point and see if you can change the way that they're thinking about the subject, so that they're not thinking in terms of violence, but they're thinking in terms of other types of solutions that are more effective. Or contact authorities if you have to, if you're really sure that something like this might happen. But that's the only thing that you can do. And unfortunately, what people are more likely to do is take sides on this is evidence that Democrats are evil, or this is evidence that Republicans are evil, or this is not evidence, and we'll probably see people arguing on social media more about whether this happens more on one side than the other, rather than what can be done about this.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Unfortunately, if you are watching on Rumble, you'll have to come over here because the Rumble stream is down. I'm not going to be able to get it back up without like leaving the show and setting up another stream and all of that. And I'm not going to do that. So hopefully you'll just come on over to YouTube and bite the bullet, or go to Kick. Go watch us on Kick because it's still going on Kick. All right. So anyway, with that said, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comment section. We got to move on to the next one. All right. So this is our last story, and let me just show you guys. All right. So you guys probably know Oliver Anthony, as many of you recall. There was a song in 2023 that went viral. It was called "Rich Men North of Richmond," and it catapulted musician Oliver Anthony to stardom. The song, which many viewed as an anthem for the common man, quickly brought him fame and fortune. But Anthony wasn't heard from much since. With his new single, "Scornful Woman," we can get a sense of what his life has been like in the past years. Anthony's former wife, Tiffany Lunsford, whom he shares 2 children with, had been married to him for seemingly many years. Like, basically, they were married for the whole time he was broke, before he blew up, dating back before his Rich Men North of Richmond fame. The lyrics paint a dark image of the recent happenings within the marriage. Joe Rogan recently examined the lyrics on his latest episode of his podcast. He also had Anthony on after that to sort of like confirm what the lyrics were about. And Joe said this: he starts making millions of dollars doing arenas. The wife divorces him. She wants everything. She wants more than half. She wants all the money he's going to be making in the future because she was with him when he was broke. He's just tortured and wants to die. And he writes this song. End quote. So, have you guys heard the song, by the way?
No.
Yes.
Scornful Woman?
No.
Yeah, it's good. It's actually better than Rich Men North of Richmond, in my opinion.
But because he got a band together to do it. Sorry, complete your sentence.
No, it's great. There's a fiddle solo. It's great. It's a good song. Even if you don't buy his story, which I kind of do. But Mike, I know you have a lot to say, so I'm going to let you talk about it.
Yeah, as tragic as this story is, and as proverbial as Mr. Anthony may have been at the time in blaming rich men north of Richmond, I hope he now understands the error of his, albeit proverbial, ways. It's not just people north of Richmond, Virginia, who are to blame, and it's sure as fuck not just men who are to blame. And let us not try to act as though there's any significant disconnect between the agenda of the machinations of Washington, D.C., which is indeed north of Richmond, only just, and the machinations of the average American woman. Maybe the agenda of the former informs the agenda of the latter, or maybe it's the other way around. I really hope the general public can get on board with what we at Honey Badger Radio have been saying for like half a generation. The average American woman doesn't care about or understand what goes on in the American government, but the American government is almost exclusively interested in the perceived inflated plight of the American woman. It's the same in Europe, and especially in the UK. Most women don't care about the government, but our governments only care about pandering to women. And so they steal from men. They will offer any woman the opportunity to steal everything from any man. They will facilitate it for the sake of their own cut of the heist. And that, Mr. Anthony, is why, to quote your own lyrics, is why your dollar ain't shit and it's taxed to no end. It's not because of rich men north of Richmond, it's because of women. Scornful women. North, west, south, and east of Richmond. Stealing your resources without remorse and without consequences. I do feel bad for you, as I feel bad for any man to whom it happens. I hope you understand that you're not alone. You are in the company of millions of men, hundreds of millions of men. I look forward to you writing and performing a song that can look beyond the scornful woman that ruined your life and look towards the scornful women and the scornful governments preying upon them who have made all of this immoral ideological wealth redistribution possible. And in your quest for understanding, I hope you don't get demoralized by the shitmongers who accuse you of indulging in victim mentality. The hit that made you famous, those all of 2 years ago, was a country song about how bad you have it. That does seem to be a subcategory of country music, the subcategory that merged with blues. Yes? That lyrical genre that was all about singing your heart out, about the tribulations affecting your life. I woke up this morning and my bitch had taken all my shit and all that business. It's something white men and black men have in common, because we all have to deal with bitches, scornful bitches, who take all our shit, take all our children, and leave us with nothing. Any musical historian will tell you how this manifested in the evolution of musical genres. Black men lost all their shit to women. They expressed it through blues music. White men lost all their shit to a woman. They expressed it through country music. These two genres amalgamated together to form a super genre incorporating blues and country. It's called rock and roll. It evolved into literally all of the best music history has ever produced. Throughout the 20th century, men of all races have been marginalized by women at the behest of our increasingly feminist government. As a result, we have been screaming about it with our music, sometimes to address it, but usually just to escape it. Much the same goes for technology. Men have built the most incredible, mind-blowing technological devices over the last 100 years or so, and we did it because we couldn't be bothered with women's shit anymore. So we sequestered ourselves into our man caves and we created excellence. This leaves us in something of a dualistic quandary. When men can't be bothered with women, they fuck off to be alone and they create art and science that exceeds the boundaries of previous generations by exponential measures. So for all our complaints about feminism, it has to be said, feminism was the catalyst that made us realize just how much we can achieve without a bunch of bitches constantly yelling in our ears about pointless narcissistic bullshit. It's been an interesting experiment, one that has advanced art and science and technology to incalculably unpredictable extents. Maybe we've gone too far. Maybe everyone having a device in their back pocket that can give them the answers to everything is too far. So, okay, maybe this is the point where we stop doing that. the point at which we stop pushing men out of the family unit and we let them get back to the ancient ritual of letting them look after their children, even if the women don't want them to. Maybe now is a good time to tell women, oh, you no longer like the men you chose? You want to divorce him? All right. Alrighty then. Fuck off. Let him keep his money. Let him look after his children while you continue to work as an assistant manager at a goddamn Walgreens. No? You don't like that whole setup? Then don't divorce him. How about that? How about you don't just monkey branch onto the next best man you can find in the hope that you steal all his money, in the hope that he makes it big one day? No, yeah, I'm by no means the first to point this out, ladies, but you can't have equality and hypergamy at the same time. If you want equality with men when it comes to money and power, you can't simultaneously covet a man who makes more money than you and is more powerful than you. This should be obvious, and it is obvious. It would be obvious to even the lowest IQ woman, were it not for the machinations of the rich men and women in Washington, D.C., who continue to brainwash you into what is obviously an impossible logical contradiction. I really don't want to leave this on a straightforward go fuck yourselves, because for the time being, we do in fact need to fuck each other. I'm just warning you. This age of technology that rapidly advances through Moore's law, we're rapidly advancing towards a point in history where men don't need women anymore. If and when that happens, the XX half of the human race will die on its ass. I know you think I'm a misogynist for saying that. I know you think I hate you, but trust me, I am looking to the future and I am trying to help you. Because I don't necessarily want the Warhammer 40,000 future. I would like the human race to include women for as long as possible, but you'd better give us some incentive. You better pull us back towards nature by being naturally feminine. Otherwise, you are fucked. And in the event that you are that fucked, we won't look back. Of course, I'll be dead by then, eh? So apparently it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if a demographic is replaced by another demographic as long as I'm dead by then, right? God, I think we expressed what I need to express. I'm gonna stop. I should have stopped long ago. I should have died long ago. Maybe
No,
I
no.
did. Eh?
It's been such an interesting series of events leading up to the circumstances of today where this kind of thing is common, right? You look back at 19th century UK and the first feminist family court advocate in the UK for changes to custody law argued in court that God meant for women to have custody of their children up until about the age of 7. I'm not kidding. That was the argument. That was essentially the entirety of her argument, was that God meant for women to be the primary custodial parents of their children up until the age of 7, because before that, because the father was primarily responsible, paternal custody was the norm in a divorce. If child was born out of wedlock, it's born into the mother's custody, different story. But in a divorce, unless there was fault with how the husband and father left the marriage, the father got custody. And so Carolyn Norton made that argument. and they changed the law based on that argument, a lot of advocacy. And then women came along and went, gosh, if we play victims and we demand that in the name of God you give us what we want, we get what we want. Well, women had been politically active throughout the existence of politics, and they'd been getting what they wanted by simply telling the men in charge, or where there was a queen, the woman in charge, this is hurting us. You have to change it, and here's how you have to change it. Do this instead. And they would get what they wanted. And that continued right up until women got voting rights. And we have heard throughout modern history that up until that point, women were terribly oppressed by the patriarchy. They were not whole people under the patriarchy. They were only chattel, and they had no legal power, no authority, no options, no nothing, no protections, and so on. And so they were horribly mistreated, terribly oppressed by the patriarchy. And then women browbeat the establishment women, the elite women, browbeat the rest of the female population into demanding voting rights. We must have voting rights. And they got them. But women were still terribly oppressed by the patriarchy, even though they were part of it now, right? And we had this next history of women changing the laws through voting and through pressure campaigns like they always had. The laws that held women accountable for their side of intimate partnerships. So you're not responsible. You're not at fault if you cheat, if you lie, if you psychologically abuse your male partner, your husband, your boyfriend, whatever. You're not at fault for that. You don't get busted for that. You don't get forced to pay child support and alimony. You get to leave him and take all of his shit. Women are still terribly, terribly oppressed by the patriarchy. Literally chattel, guys. It is just so hard to be a woman. You just can't understand what it's like to never get called a deadbeat for not having a job. How horrible. What oppression. What patriarchy. Such terrible, terrible pressure. Right? And what it's like to know that nothing you can do is wrong enough to keep you from getting custody of your children. Unless you kill them, and then nobody has custody. And then you get to make a lot of excuses, right? Terribly, terribly oppressed by the patriarchy, women are. Just awful. Can't imagine what it's like to live like that if you're not one of us poor victims of the patriarchy. And if you happen to wreck a man, just completely, utterly destroy him, abuse him to the point where he commits suicide. And people talk about his suicide and the abuse that led to it, and the pain and suffering he must have gone through. You're a victim of that if you're a woman, right? You're terribly oppressed by the how dare they not consider your feelings as the person who has been condemned for causing this man to harm himself. He's the one who did it, obviously, not you, right? It's not because you stole all of his shit. It's not because you said terrible things about him or to him. It's not because you hit him in private. It's not because you cheated on him, lied to him, tore him down, made him feel like nothing, made him feel like a burden on you, made him feel like a burden on his children, made him feel like a burden on the public. No. It's because he was the bad guy. He was trying to abuse you, right? By playing the victim and killing himself. And now, you're suffering the consequences. Terribly oppressed by the patriarchy. And this is what it is in women's mind. This is what it is in the minds of feminists today. That even though under law and policy that has been pressure campaigned for, advocated for, voted for, and legislated by female legislators, that a woman can do nothing to earn any of the money that a man has coming to him for his work, that she can be completely disloyal, that she can be emotionally abusive, that she can be physically abusive, that she can mistreat him and his children, and then abandon the family. And unlike how a man gets treated when he abandons the family, she's a victim. And she gets paid. She gets compensation. She gets custody of the children. She gets child support. She gets all of the property. She gets at least half of the income. And she gets to claim that she has some sort of ownership of his future labor. Why? Because she's so terribly, horribly, awfully oppressed by the patriarchy. Y'all are doing it wrong, man. This patriarchy sucks. This is the worst patriarchy ever. Like, how on earth are you supposed to keep women down doing this shit?
Yep.
Women were still viewed as chattel.
All right. Well, that's it, I guess. The only thing I will say about this Oliver Anthony thing, which is kind of interesting, is that it's just crazy, like, how many men are going through this, like that they are having this very same experience. You know, Mike joked before the show that Oliver Anthony is speed running the male experience with both of his songs. And I mean, that really kind of sums it up. But like, I feel like whenever I see like a man I run into or friends that I've known, like a couple weeks ago, I went to a funeral for a very old friend of mine. And there were some other guys that I saw there at the funeral, and these were like my high school buddies that I used to be, you know, hang out with all the time. We were going to when I was going to high school in the late 80s, early 90s. So that's a long time ago. And I'm following up with them and seeing how things are going. And like most of them are like separated, divorced, fighting for child custody. It's like, how did this happen? And it's not uncommon. Like, this is a very, very common problem I see everywhere. And like when I'm out here and about in, you know, Virginia, and I'm like, go to the dog park and I talk to, you know, maybe I'm making small talk with another dog owner that's there. And if it's a guy and they ask me like what I do, and I tell them what I do, you know, oh, I run a podcast. Oh, what's it about? And I say, well, I talk about men's issues. I'm a little bit worried that they're going to be like laughing at me, but the men never do. They're like, oh, really? Like what? And I tell, oh yeah, you know, child custody, divorce, you know, circumcision. I list off all the things, and they all have a story to tell. They're like, oh my God, dude, like I know a guy, or I went through this, or I know how bad it is. And, you know, watching Oliver and Anthony go from, you know, basically a working class guy. He worked in factories. I think he sold like, you know, machinery or something before, and he was doing music on the side. And of course, you know, he was in, I think, West Virginia. And West Virginia, because of like, you know, what's happened to in the Rust Belt is essentially what it is, I believe. You know, they don't have like there's like the hollers, and a lot of the mines were closed down because they wanted to stop, you know, getting fossil fuels, and they put all these people out of work. And because there's a lot of people there that are, you know, working class, low income, they don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of job opportunities, they can't really go anywhere, so they end up stuck there with their families. They get on drugs because there's a lot of like, you know, like crystal meth abuse and things like that, alcohol. It's a big thing in West Virginia in particular. And, you know, he lived there and he was going through that struggle. And I have a lot of sympathy for that. I watched a guy, I can't remember the name of his channel, but he goes all over the country to like these little pockets to like talk to people. It's a very good channel, very interesting. It gives you like, you know, he humanizes people all over the United States that live in different areas. And he goes to the hollers in West Virginia, and he's like talking to the men there. And they all like are guys that haven't worked forever, but they used to work in the mines and stuff, and now they can't work anywhere. So what happens? You have nothing to do. You seek, you know, distractions. Some people, maybe they make the most of it, but a lot of people don't. And I mean, it's just crazy. Like, he blows up, and then like Joe Rogan, he goes on Joe Rogan's podcast after the first song blows up, and Joe says like, whatever you do, don't sign anything. They're gonna try to take your money. You know, basically warning him about the music labels, which I completely understand because again, we were just talking about Michael Jackson, who was constantly fighting with the record labels and you know, the stuff that happened to people like P Diddy and like Will Smith, who just came out with a new song. It's cringe as hell. And Kanye, all these issues. So obviously, there's a lot of like, you know, there's a dark, seedy underbelly to our entertainment and cultural institutions, which is a problem because, you know, art should be beautiful and enjoyed by all, but it's run by some very evil people. And so he probably takes Joe Rogan's advice, and his wife is like, what the fuck? Why aren't you taking the money? And maybe that sort of started it because, you know, again, he's thinking about what is best in the long run. Joe Rogan's trying to give him advice. And maybe, I don't want to speak for it because we don't have all the details. We certainly don't have her side of the story. But maybe she became embittered with him because he didn't sign any contracts. Because he didn't want to, you know, basically be controlled by some record label. And you can just look around at the industry and see, like, look at what, you know, you talked about, you know, like these young men in the industry, like we were talking about P. Diddy and people who enter the business very young. And I was thinking about, you know, guys like Britney Spears and Justin Bieber, you know, and all that they went through. Like, I would see that as a serious warning. Like, I don't want to get involved with that, right? I'd rather just, you know, maybe I'll make less money, but I can like strike out on my own and feel like I'm in control of my own destiny. And maybe his wife was like, that's not good enough and just wants to like, I don't know, maybe she wants to take him for whatever he has. Maybe she has people in her ear saying, you know, you can get half, you know, you know, you can get half, you know, you can get half. And she's like, half, Eddie, I want half. So it's possible, but without speculating too much on his particular situation, it is interesting to see just how common this problem is. Just how common it is for men to find someone, you know, think that they're set, maybe they're in a bad place and that woman is with them, like ride or die at first. Maybe they had a lot and then they lost it, but for whatever reason it goes sideways and the women leave them and these guys are just like a shell of what they were. And you know, when I went to my friend's funeral and I saw those guys, some of them, I was like, man, I wish I could help you, but I don't know what to do. And of course, they're still kind of trying to figure out how to make it work, you know. And I don't know. So, anyway,
There's something else that needs to be said about this because I'm encountering more and more. I guess this is sort of the male version of fatalism, where guys are saying, you know, this is just the way women are, and they have to be controlled. That's not a good way to look at it, right? It's not just the way women are. Women who do this are responsible for their actions. They are capable of not doing this, and they are choosing to do it anyway. And if the general male population finds it necessary to push back hard against what feminists would call advancements, but not everybody would. It's not because women can't help doing this. It's because women are culpable for their actions and they have refused to not do this. They can do it. If they're doing wrong, they deserve to be treated like they did wrong, the same as any man who does wrong, and held accountable. I have no objection to pushing back. In fact, I think that quite a bit of what feminism would call advancements needs to be pushed way the hell back, including voting rights. But it's not because women are incapable of controlling themselves. It's because women have exploited men's goodwill and abused the systems that they were able to take advantage of and have criminally abused what they refer to as the patriarchy, which is really just, again, men's goodwill. And they deserve to be held culpable and to face consequences for their actions. And there aren't any of these consequences that these men are talking about that I can't live with, right? As long as we know that the world will be run the way men have always run it, we don't have to worry that women are going to suffer, because women didn't suffer the way that feminists claim they did in the past. Most women were pretty content with the old system, right? So, yeah, don't treat it like, oh, these poor women, they don't know any better, we have to take care of them. It's fine to have that advocacy, push back on this, stop the train, but stop it because women are responsible, women are culpable, and not because men have to take responsibility for women. Men have a
All
right
right.
to defend themselves.
Yeah. All right, then. Well, with that said, we're going to wrap the show up there. It's a little bit of a longer one because of the technical problems. But we're going to be going into the patron show now. We're going to look at this from Ms. Magazine, which is Feminist Roundup, the best and worst quotes of 2024. Yeehaw! So we'll find out what Ms. Magazine deems as real feminism versus fake feminism. And we'll see what they say about that in the patron show. But with that said, if you guys want to join us for that, you have to go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe so you can hop on to the Discord server and hang out with us and watch the additional content and even give us your takes. Maybe you want to come in there and demolish us with reason and logic in a debate or something. Or maybe you just want to tell us that we're right because we usually are. Whichever one it is, feel free to do that. So anyway, with that said, I want to thank Hannah and Mike for joining me on the news show, and I thank you guys most of all for being so patient as I deal with Virginia internet and its ability to cope with thunderstorms, which apparently it can't, because every time it rains, there's a power outage. So I don't know what's going on with Appalachian Power, but there appears to be an issue with their ability to keep the grid up and running. So anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.